And I mean, I'm sitting there, claimed to be a Christian, but I wasn't. And, I'm like, I knew without a doubt that hell was real and I was going there.
Andrew, how did you find Carnivore?
Um, just that process, living life. Um, I I was listening and preparing for this today. I was listening to a speech of Jimmy Valvano. I grew up in North Carolina, and the famous never give up speech that he gave at the ESPYS. And there's a part in that speech where he talks about he believes a good conversation is always oriented from where you started, where you are, and where you're going. And I thought I would use that template as far as just kind of best identifying kind of how I found Carnivore and where I'm at currently and where I hope to go. Um, so, I mean, I guess as far as like starting as a child, I was born in 1988. So I was the 90s kid, very active. I sweated a lot. That might seem like TMI. And trust me, there's going to be tons of TMI in this, but, hopefully you'll see the relevance towards the end. Um, but, just I was very inquisitive, very curious, kind of an old soul. And, ironically enough, I always had a craving for milk and salty food. And come to find out, now that I'm kind of on the back end, I fully realized why that was the case. I mean, you start to realize pretty quickly going down this carnivore journey about electrolytes. And a lot of kind of what I've noticed in observations, a lot of people crave the foods they crave. One, because they're deficient in their electrolytes, and then the second part of that is in trying to fulfill their electrolytes, they then go down the journey of these hormonal changes that cause them to either be mechanized to be hungrier or to be satiated. So that was kind of a cool thing, and I'll go back to that in more detail. But obviously that's my childhood. It was a very happy childhood, and the next part, was 9/11. And that always hit me really, really hard. I mean, I'm not from New York. I don't know anybody from New York. But my mom worked for Marsh McLennan, an insurance company, and they occupied floors 93 through 100 in the North Tower. And she was set to be in New York in the World Trade Center, if the next Tuesday. So 9/11 was on a Tuesday. She would have been there the next Tuesday. And, just the empathy of, thinking about, man, like a lot of people lost their parents, a lot of people lost their loved ones, how tragic that would be. And, I was that kid. I was in eighth grade, it was kind of like rally around the flag, Lee Greenwood, God bless America. The Yankees are playing the Diamondbacks in the World Series. There's flyovers, presidents throwing out first pitch, Toby Keith's saying he'll stick a boot up your, it's like, all this kind of stuff. And, I bought into it. And that camaraderie, but that was the method as to why I bought into it. And anyway, I get to college, good high school, everything like that. Get to college, and college to me is a time where we start thinking, actually thinking. High school, it's just kind of like, hey, what's next? Well, I'm in 10th grade, 11th grade. I mean, it just is what it is. But once you're in college, it's kind of like the doors start to open a little bit. You can kind of make your own choices, and in doing so, just being away from home, I lost 160 pounds my freshman year of college. And I mainly attribute that weight loss to exercise. Granted, I was eating healthier. I was on a meal plan, as far as like through the university, eat a big breakfast, and I was doing things that were healthier, but I attributed a lot of that weight loss to exercise. Um, but like I said, you're thinking for the first time, you're starting to ask these difficult questions, the existential crisis of life, at least for me, being a little bit more philosophical. And, I'm asking questions that people can't answer, and they still can't, even to this point, but to me, that's not what bothered me. What bothered me was the fact that I was asking questions and people didn't care that they didn't know. And, to me, that was more indicative of just an apathy that is rooted in our society. I think we don't think critically. We don't value it anymore. We live on a very short attention span of social media. We're swiping, and our attention spans have gotten so short. We don't think things through. We're told what to think. We're suggested, how to act and everything like that. So, for me, around that same time, Loose Change, the documentary came out about 9/11. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, World Trade Center 7, you know, like what's that all about? I mean, that building never got hit by a plane and it fell like a Las Vegas casino. I mean, it was just okay. And again, at that point, that root of the fact that my mom would have been in the towers and that intrigue that I always had with that event, it now materialized in a different way. And it really evoked a conspiratorial nature in me that, I look back and I can honestly say that I think it was something that was a detriment to the growth of my life. But I look back also and realize that it was divinely perfect as far as, this testimony that's been built in me. Without it, I would have been blind. Um, and it really gave me a means to break down reality in such a way that I can figure it out, digest it, and present it to other people to hopefully make a difference. And that's what I think is so special about, obviously this platform. I mean, me coming on here is totally random in the sense that I'm not on social media. I don't have any footprint or anything like that. Um, but hoarding my story, hoarding my testimony is really horrendous. So I appreciate the platform, and obviously I've, seen your videos as far as kind of how that materialized in my own progression. Um, but I basically learned firsthand, ignorance is bliss, and in going through that whole process, you start to really just see the world from a totally different perspective. I feel like we're encouraged to have empathy when it comes to looking down at people that might have less than us. You know, be empathetic. Think about how they feel or we're like that. And yes, there's a lot of virtue in that. But I was always intrigued too to have empathy for people that presented themselves, socially higher than us. Meaning like, hey, if I'm trying to have a company and I want to make the most money, what am I going to do? How am I going to think? Could I get addicted to that? If I've been addicted to, um, drinking, drugs, porn, why can't these people get addicted to making money? And kind of thinking outside the box when it comes to that. So, obviously college happens, everything like that. And I feel like obviously I graduated. I feel like at this point, college is basically, it's not the same thing that it was, um, in the sense that it's, you know, I'll put it this way. If everybody goes to college, college becomes a high school diploma with debt because you don't differentiate yourself. At that point, everybody does it, so you're putting virtue on getting a master's. And ironically enough, to me, that's further indoctrination. With kind of this matrix lifestyle that's running counterintuitive to nature and what we're living in. And I feel like what carnivore, taps on. So, college taught me a lot of bad things. Ironically enough, and you'll hear a little bit further in the story, it turned out to be a blessing. But, at the time it taught me how to drink. It taught me how to do drugs. It taught me how to, live it up. It taught me bad dietary habits. After losing all that weight, I gained it back. And that just showcases kind of when you lose it based on exercise, you're just setting yourself up for failure on the back end. It's the sustainability is not there because again, it's a hormone game. Um, so all this kind of stuff's going on. I've graduated from college, but I'm kind of in the midst of the whole '08 thing. I graduated in 2011, so I'm still feeling kind of the implications of that. I'm working retail jobs. I'm kind of cynical about everything. I'm like, I went to college for this, and just ran back to my childhood passion of playing golf. And you know, golf's been a great microcosm to kind of think about life and to kind of meditate and study kind of where I'm at. A lot of the kind of examples that are in golf are indicative of life itself. And so, I mean, at that time, I'm kind of trying to find my way. I'm chasing down childhood dreams and just all this kind of stuff. And, I'm just searching. I'm lost at this point. Um, I'm overweight. I'm in horrible shape. I'm drinking. I'm coping. And just I have no goal, no purpose, no mission. I'm just waking up, going to sleep. You know, and at that point, I would always, be trying new things. I tried a vegan diet. I did it, for a while. I actually ended up doing 75 days straight where I subsisted on nothing but fruit. I was eating like, 4 avocados a day, 8 bananas. I mean, like there is no telling like, how much sugar I was eating or anything like that. And here's the thing. And this is where I think people need to understand context. And we don't as a society. At least in America, I think just in the world at large, we don't understand context. If I told you like, I sucked on my mom's breast, you'd be like, oh my gosh, that's appalling. It's like, well, you don't agree with breastfeeding? It's like, oh, well, yeah, of course. Context is really the missing link. And without context, you can make anything sound like anything. Um, so, I think the context of why the vegan diet, and when I say vegan, I'm talking more about like raw fruits, stuff like that, raw vegetables, which obviously that's very limited. You have to kind of cook those because they're so fibrous. But, raw fruits in particular, I saw great improvements from that. And again, I equate that because in America, the predisposition is to be overweight, obesity. And if you cut out the processed foods, the seed oils, and all this kind of stuff like that, by virtue of that alone, you're going to be healthier than what you were. But again, the long term sustainability of it is just not there. Um, and I learned that the hard way because, obviously everything kind of plays itself out. So at this point, it's 2019, and I relocated to California. I'm going to LA, and I'm a golf instructor at this point, and I lived there for about 8 months, and COVID happens, and it's like if you're talking about being at ground zero, um, I felt like Anne Frank in kind of back in World War II days. I mean, it was total lockdown. It was a Gestapo type environment. If you didn't have a receipt or you were walking the dog, I mean, they were writing citations. The beach was closed, but the dispensaries were open. Domino's was open. The corner store was open. So, I drank beer, I smoked weed, and, just ate Domino's. And I gained probably about 90 pounds pretty quick. I was already kind of heavy, close to probably about, 280, and it was like, open my eyes and I'm like over 360, 370. And I'm still teaching golf. I mean, I've still got videos of me playing golf, and, I've carried my weight well, just from being kind of an overweight kid, and being very athletic. But yeah, all that kind of stuff's playing itself out. And I ended up relocating to Orange County, and, in the same way that college taught me a lot of negative things, that experience taught me a lot of negative things. And I took from it, the way that I coped after a long day. It's like, hey, let me go get a 6 pack. I'm going to drink a 6 pack of IPAs and drive around for a little bit, like not, yeah, that's probably where I need to keep my mouth shut as far as like, to me, there's a difference between driving drunk and, having a drink and, but yeah, you can't regulate that. So, I mean, I digress, but anyway, I'd drink a 6 pack of beer and, then binge eat and basically call it a day. And I was comfortable, even though I was coping, it's just, I got comfortable in that mediocrity. And before I knew it, I mean, I was over 400 pounds, and I'm getting priced out of the market as far as, lessons and everything like that. And I relocate, and, the winds of destiny blew me to Odessa, Texas, of all places. And, you know, I am trying to figure out kind of the direction of my life and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, I realized pretty quickly from being there that I absolutely made a huge mistake. That golf was kind of over for me. The passion wasn't there anymore. Like, I relocated to a place that literally is just the total opposite of Orange County, California. And so anyway, I stayed there for a little bit. I negotiated severance, and I'm living out my lease in Odessa. And for about a 6 month period, I literally paid my rent. I got help from my parents. I did stuff on credit. I had the severance, just all this kind of stuff. And I basically was bedridden. I was full on depressed. I didn't get up out of bed, and I won't say idle as far as an actual act, but I was with the slowest bullet that you can imagine, and it was a horrible time in my life. It was absolutely meaningless. I would wake up at all parts of the day. I would go to sleep at all parts of the day. Um, go do some day drinking. Eat some food, pass out, food coma. At this point, I'm over 500 pounds. I remember sweating profusely at night when I would sleep, getting up 3 to 4 times a night to go use the bathroom, piss that looked like foam, taking shits that was like soft serve ice cream, just, and so much of it. Okay. And, I'm getting into the gruesome details because I feel like there's somebody out there that's going to hear this, and maybe this is a spark. Maybe this is something that, kind of just wakes you up to what, I've come to experience, and you can experience it too. Um, so yeah, I mean, acid reflux up to here, um, just horrible. I mean, like I was truly knocking on death's door. And on February 11th, 2023, I stayed up all night that night, which wasn't totally uncommon. I think I ate at like 11 p.m. and stayed up all night. And I'm just watching stuff on my phone, YouTube, playing games or whatever. And I get up to go to the bathroom, and literally what I was looking at, the shower curtain, all of a sudden I like blinked a few times, and it felt like the shower curtain was 50 feet away from me and getting further away from me. And the only thing I can describe it is it felt like my soul was leaving my body. And, at that point, my life totally changed. It was like I got woken back up, and, I was living this, you know, delusional, episode where all of a sudden I was awake and I was located in Odessa, and I'm over 500 pounds. And it's like, where am I at? I mean, it was crazy. And I mean, I'm sitting there, claimed to be a Christian, but I wasn't. And I'm like, I knew without a doubt that hell was real, and I was going there. Um, and at that point, I was calling out, just repeating the name of Jesus Christ over and over. I was in the fetal position in my bed, and the next day I went to like this emergency room, and my blood pressure was like 210 over 160, something ridiculous like that. I mean, I was literally on death's door. At that point, I think I weighed like 530, um, which I found out that because when I weighed myself, it said error. And the guy was kind of like, I mean, I just guessed. I was like, well, I guess like 420, 430. He was like, that scale maxes out at 500. So I mean, at that point, I knew that. So anyway, that's kind of where it started. I go into that much detail just because, I want people to understand, like, this is not just some kind of, happenstance of, hey, I watched a few videos and okay, this, happened. I feel like this has been a struggle, my whole entire life, and I think we're born into that struggle. We live so counterintuitively in accordance to nature in our modern day and lives. So anyway, since that day, I haven't eaten any processed food. I don't eat. I like, my life changed after that. It was such a definitive line in the sand. I don't eat processed food. I don't drink alcohol. That's another story in itself, which we don't need to get into all that. But that happened about 6 months prior. So, yeah, I was clean in that sense, but, I was still smoking weed. I was still binge eating, all the way up until that day of February 11th. And so, yeah, basically, I relocated back to North Carolina. My lease was up February 13th. And, I'm driving across the southeast of the United States at 500 and some odd pounds, barely fitting in my Honda Civic. And uh, I made it home. It's amazing that I did. I mean, I look back on it now and it's like you hear stories of people that are in far better shape. I mean, granted, maybe a little older, and it's like they sit on a flight and all of a sudden they get like a blood clot and they die. I mean, it's like that could be a real thing. And fortunately, I made it home. And basically, it started as a whole foods diet where I was just like, hey, look, if God made it, I can eat it. I don't care. I'm just not eating processed foods. I'm not eating chips, pizza, fast food, soda, anything like that. Not touching it. You know, and it's funny how everything kind of materialized from that. Um, what started out as a whole foods diet became paleo, and then paleo kind of became keto, and keto became carnivore. And through carnivore, I guess you can call it ketovore, maybe. It's probably kind of where I'm at, now. Um, but in saying where I'm at, the current season, I guess you could say. I mean, when I actually got home to North Carolina and weighed myself, I'd probably already lost about 10 pounds by that point, and I weighed in at 518. In fact, I still have. Let's see. I don't know. Maybe I can email this to you, but it's like, these are all my weigh-ins, you know, 518, and you see it like all the way down. And this is literally like, February 22nd, 2023 was the first weigh-in. I was 518, and this last one says 917, 24, 271. So down 247. And yeah, so all this kind of stuff's happening, and I could tell you like definitively what we're told is total nonsense, in the sense that calories in, calories out, it's 100% true. Okay, but it's true on a false pretense. Meaning, if you're eating, like a gerbil, and you're eating an inappropriate diet, then yeah, I mean, calories in, calories out, sure. Okay. But where that diet falls flat on its face, and what I've come to learn as far as the mechanism of the body, is in the hormonal health. Point blank, I started like reverse engineering this, which ironically enough, if you could imagine like what my major was in college, is exercise and sports science. So being over 500 pounds with an exercise and sports science degree, that might be the epitome of irony. Somebody needs to make a movie about that. Um, so I had a baseline as far as understanding certain physiology and stuff like that. But I didn't really know how simple it really is. It's a mechanism. And by reverse engineering it, I went with the first, supposition of kind of like investigating this. And I said, fat is not the villain. And when I say fat, I don't mean fat like dietary. I mean like the fact that we get fat. I think the mechanism that allows us to get fat is awesome. I think it needs to be celebrated. See, whatever we run from creates a boogeyman that now, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The mechanism of how we get fat is literally why we're here. If we couldn't, our ancestors would have died somewhere along the way. And ironically enough, my opinion is um, people that are predisposed to getting fat easier are genetically superior. Meaning, if you have a difficult time putting on weight, chances are you would be the runt of the litter and you wouldn't make it through winter. And in understanding the mechanism of how this metabolism works, and the hormonal effects, I started looking at it and saying, okay, well, insulin is a fat storage hormone. Okay. If we spike insulin, then we are mechanizing us to store fat. If we never spike it, Now we are creating this avalanche, this snowball effect where we're gaining more and more towards burning fat. And then I started thinking, I was like, nature is the ultimate truth teller. People eat fruit during the summer, the spring and summer, when the fruit is harvesting. Okay. And then during the winter, it's like, well, that's how they get their cells. They get fat in their cells, to survive the winter. But yet the winter never comes for us. We live in a supermarket, world where we're constantly just eating fruit. But again, I'm going through this whole process and, losing weight, consistently via all this kind of stuff and listening to my body as far as, all that response. Um, in fact, if somebody's watching this and they want to take credit for a research idea, I believe that dementia and Alzheimer's is directly being caused by a dietary cholesterol deficiency. So yeah, feel free to utilize that. Take all the credit. Obviously statins play a role, which that's a double negative in itself. The fact that, people that have high cholesterol, that are not eating cholesterol because they think that's a corollary, and then they get on statins on top of it. And it's like, that is basically a recipe for dementia, and so there's all this kind of stuff, in relation to the pharmaceutical company doesn't want us to be healthy. It's bad for business. I'm of the mindset, and this is definitely conspiratorial. I think the whole point of universities and medical schools is to pinpoint with precision a parameter where we can keep people sick enough that they still need the product, but well enough that they don't die and pay that extra form of taxation. We've got to have, that pinpoint parameter. And I think that's what the medical schools, ultimately create. Um, So, yeah, in saying all this, obviously, you know, nutrient density, I believe that fat people are nutrient deficient. I don't think that you're fat because you've had too many calories. I honestly, what I've eaten today, um, so today I woke up, I had 9 eggs with a little bit of olive oil and about 2 teaspoons of butter kind of mixed in. And I love to just eat that by itself. It's one of the things I like. And then before I came on, I had dinner and 4 strips of bacon and 7 eggs. So for today, I had 16 eggs and 4 strips of bacon. And I'll probably have a little bit of steak tonight. You know, my family would probably cook a little bit, and I'll probably have a little bit of steak. If you add up all the calories of that, which that technically could be like a light day as far as how eggs play into it, but I'm having like as much calories. I mean, I'm eating 3,000 calories, 4,000 calories some days, and consistently losing weight because my hormonal health is such that I'm more efficient. My metabolic rate is higher. I have more energy. I want to get out and walk. I mean, it's this zest for life. I mean, I'm sure you've felt this. You've spoken on it. This carnivore zen, the clarity of mind that we have, when eating an appropriate diet. Um, so yeah, all that kind of stuff. And I guess, as far as where I'm going, you know, I wanted to come on and just let people know, like, I think a conspiratorial mindset was so beneficial in getting to this point. But I kind of likened it to what gets us up the mountain isn't going to get us back down. Otherwise we just keep climbing. And, to come full circle, I think, you know, we have this tendency to kind of be willing to be mediocre because it's common. It's where we've been. We seek homeostasis. So when it comes to, like, doing something new, we want to be perfect at it. You know, I've got to have only grass fed meat. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. I can't have any sugar at all. I can't do this. And that dogmatic approach does serve you well, to some degree. But I want to be able to clarify this to people because I see it happen so much in the carnivore community, and it kind of pisses me off, where people will tell people, like, well, if you can't get the grass fed meat, if you can't Your omega-6 ratio will be off, like, oh, you can't do bacon, well, your eggs, I mean, they're being fed soy, like, I mean, those eggs are garbage, everything like that. That is venom. It's horrible. I'm convinced that I can take anybody um, and literally give them the cheapest food. Go to the IGA, just the cheapest food that you can find, and eat eggs that are the palest yolks, the most gristled meat that you could imagine, and they will lose weight. They will. That's how much more nutrients you're going to find in comparison to how they say nutrients is abundant in vegetables and fruits. And same reason we're talking about hormones. It's chemical warfare. A plant wants to become a plant. It has no defense. When you eat a plant, that plant is going to bind to nutrients, take it out. Okay, because it's fibrous, it's going to come back out in your stool. You can't absorb it. So when you take that dump, obviously we live in a day and age where we have plumbing systems now, but you have to understand in nature, in the past, we would have taken a dump. And we take that dump, that is built-in fertilizer for the mechanism to that plant to grow back again. So, in saying all the dogmatic stuff, I think we villainize sugar, and rightfully so. When you're in a process where you're sick, um, I think that's a good thing. Yeah, get off the sugar. Me personally, I can only speak to my experience, and I graduated to these things. I think starting with carnivore could be arguably a horrible thing to do because I think that by virtue of just living life, we're destined to make mistakes along the way. And when you make a mistake by starting at the finish line, you can almost discourage yourself more to the point where you become hopeless. So I think the idea of the incremental improvement and realizing that the processed foods are the reason that we're as sick as we are. These vegetable seed oils, you know, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, these are so easy to be oxidized. Whereas saturated fat, we see that on the counter. We see some lard or some tallow and it's hardened and it's like, well, that's what it's doing in your body. It's like, I thought about that one day and it was like, I've always used that as a fear tactic. But ironically enough, room temperature is like 70 degrees and my body is like 98 degrees. At 98 degrees, it ain't hardened. That is oil. That is lubricate. It's going through your body. It's making everything work. It's transporting the mechanism of vitamin D so that when you get sunlight energy, you can actually make something of it. It's making so many things happen in the body. Sugar to me is jet fuel. It has its place. But when we only put jet fuel in our vehicle, then when we try to put our unleaded fuel, our 87 octane or 89 octane, well, then the mechanism doesn't respond. And that's a problem. But if we can get back to the point where we're sensitive to insulin, and metabolically healthy, well, yeah, if we want to add a little bit of, jet fuel, so be it. I think we need to get that jet fuel from natural sources, let it be fruits, ideally in season. Let it be honey when you're listening to your body, not because you're lusting after it, like you just have a sweet tooth, which can be tough for people to decipher. And if it is, don't do it. Cut yourself off so you can get that parameter as far as what's going on. But I have honey, and I think the more I looked into it, as far as the carnivore community, they talk about electrolytes so much, and they powder electrolytes, and obviously you're losing your electrolytes. It's very easy for the body to kind of release those. It's just a process of ketosis. It's not, it's not a bad thing. Okay. But in the same sense, I look at those powders as an enemy. Because again, back to my original logic, if it's not made by God, found naturally in nature, it's contrary. Okay. To me, it's the same mechanism of making vegetable seed oil. Okay. It's not as sinister, but to me, it's still in that same parameter. So I look at it as far as, in looking at the renal health, as far as angiotensin, aldosterone, these hormones that allow the kidneys to reabsorb electrolytes. That happens from a small insulin bump. So, the mechanism as far as the long term, you look at kind of like, and I guess what I'm describing to some extent, although maybe not to the extent that Paul Saladino took it, But to get back to a healthy state, to get all those nutrients back in our body, to get us, back where we should be, that's a process. That needs to be one thing. As far as the longevity and the sustainability on the back end, just understand. I mean, there's not everything is inherently evil, just for the sake of it. It's like anti sugar. You know. But again, context be everything. Sugar is absolutely horrible when you weigh 518 pounds. Okay.
So you mentioned family before. How have your family reacted to this? And of course, the dramatic weight loss.
Well, I think from the conspiratorial angle, I've always kind of felt like a little bit of the black sheep to some degree. I mean, I feel like my whole family has kind of struggled with weight to some degree, not as much as me. Um, they've moderated it, but they've always been overweight themselves. So to come at it from this conspiratorial angle, um, I think they were turned off by it originally, but because of kind of the way everything has played itself out, in the political world, just the social world, just everything, mainstream media, all this kind of stuff like that, they came around to it, and in them experiencing everything like that, they've lost weight themselves. So it's a great thing, yeah, for sure. But I mean, a lot of people though, it's like a lot of people don't get as sick as I did as early as I did to create that sense of urgency. So I mean, I think that's kind of a caveat too. A lot of people are going to say, "Well, hey, that's awesome, that's cool," but I really don't have to worry about that. You know, in which case, it'll be applicable later. Because metabolic syndrome and the way that our body kind of ages, um, it's inevitable. So a lot of people that look healthy, just by kind of measurements, metrics, when it comes to their actual like health, I would say that, it's actually kind of a blessing that I got off the rails as much as I did, where it became so urgent and apparent to, kind of combat these things.
Yeah. So you've gone from 518 to, sorry, you said it was about 270 now?
Hmm. Yeah.
Right. So are you comfortable at 270? Are you looking at reducing it more?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I mean, it's interesting when you lose weight in conjunction with healthy hormones, you lose it in a different way. I've lost weight before where it's kind of like you lose weight, you, but you still kind of look a little awkward. I mean, as far as like just the way where the fat goes. Um, I'll say by losing it, correctly, hormonally correctly, um, I'm in a good spot right now, but my long term is probably about 215. Um, and at this point, I'm losing weight about a pound to 2 pounds. I would say a week. Probably a pound a week. Something like that. And to me, that's sustainable. If I'm doing that and I'm eating foods that literally make me feel like a superhero, I'm happy. I'm blessed. You know, I look at the other foods. A lot of people talk about how restrictive the carnivore diet is. To me, that's like saying, well, life's pretty restrictive. I mean, you only got oxygen, nitrogen. Like, I mean, I feel like we need some more. I mean, it's like no, like we love it. It's species appropriate. So I don't view it as restrictive. To me, variety is yesterday I had my eggs over medium. Today I had them hard boiled. Like that to me is variety. So, if I'm going to eat foods that are appropriate to me, then so be it. Um,
Yeah, I think yeah, variety beyond that kind of thing is just marketing, right?
well, I look at a lot of those foods as they're not even food. We live in a plastic, day and age. And, when you see like Crisco, I mean, Crisco stood for cotton rapeseed oil. Like, it was a byproduct of an industry. It's like you're sitting there, it's like, what am I putting in my body? And like you sit there and I look at Cheetos now or something like that. And I'm like, that is literally eating styrofoam. Like, when is the last time you ever looked at a styrofoam cup and be like, is there some Cheeto dust on that? It's like never, And it's like I've never looked at a tree or a leaf and gone, wow, man, I'm getting really hungry, But you see a steak, I mean, like rendered fat. I mean, it's just like, wow, if you're hungry, you're hungry. And that's the interesting part as far as that hormone game too. When I was at my heaviest, I could eat a whole pizza, bag of chips, 3/4 of a gallon of milk, and in 2 hours, I was hungry. I was hungry. I just ate that, and I'm hungry. 2 hours later, okay. Now I eat a meal, and I literally, could go days. I mean, like I've done fasting in the past. Whenever I was kind of going through that searching phase of my life, I've done 11 days with no food, no water, and I've done other fasts where I drank water. And an irony was when I drank water, it was harder to fast because when I drank water, it threw off my electrolytes. Because what people don't realize is when you're burning fat and you're getting ketosis, when your fat cells incinerate, the water that's in the cell is literally like your water. It's not like exterior water, it's your water. And that water can hydrate you in ways that you can't understand. I mean, like in the correlation of your electrolytes, your body's just in tune. Um, so, in drinking water, it became more difficult. So I looking at this kind of metabolic pathway of ketosis and keeping insulin down, it was amazing to me how, you can go a long time, literally where you're not even hungry. It actually kind of freaked me out a little bit. I mean, I think that there's a reverse side to carnivore where when you don't feel like you're hungry at all, it kind of freaks you out, and I've felt that plenty of times along the way.
It does give you a certain level of empowerment though, right? Like
Oh, for sure.
because you can just say no to things that in the past would have been triggers, right?
For sure. Yeah, no doubt.
Have you had anyone around you outside family express interest in what you're doing?
Uh, I mean, yeah. I mean, as far as like my direct family, I mean, like I said, my parents have kind of uh, done their stuff. They'll lose 30 pounds, gain 10. Lose 5, gain 10, lose 20. I mean, like they kind of oscillate a little bit, but in general, I, I think for me, it kind of comes off a little bit as extreme, to a lot of other people. And I get it. I mean, if you're sitting there, I'm a single guy. Okay. I mean, if fortunately the girl that I'm kind of like dating right now, she's interested in this lifestyle too. I mean, she does it herself. It was kind of a cool match. But in general, I mean, you're raising kids. It's kind of like so many parents like just give them what they want. They're just give them the sugar. Just whatever. Here, be quiet. That kind of thing. And for those people, it would be tougher.
Yeah. So if you were advising someone on getting started with carnivore, what would you tell them?
I would probably say the first thing is you need to look yourself in the mirror and realize that you're not going to get healthier because of a doctor. You're not going to get healthier because of a pill. We live in a world where seeing is believing. And if I were to have a cut on my hand, and you see it bleeding, and then I come back, 2 weeks later and it's healed, nobody's jumping up and down. Nobody's claiming a miracle. Nobody's holding the Bible up for 23 hours a day. That same mechanism that allows it to happen right here where we take it for granted, it's happening inside of us. Okay. We don't need a pill. We don't need a doctor. We don't need all this kind of stuff like that. And I'm not sitting here saying, doctors are bad. Doctors to me are nothing more than technicians that take my blood and we just talk. You know, I don't view them as an authority, no more than any other thing. It's an industry. It's designed to make money. So I think the first thing I would look myself in the mirror and basically be, am I willing to die? It, am I going to protect this so badly, this lifestyle that I'm not even enjoying? Am I going to protect it so much so that I'm going to handicap my ability to actually be successful? Because if you try to do this with a doctor in your ear, people speak life into people. If you got somebody in your ear saying, "Hey man, you need to watch out. Be careful," that is going to stunt your growth. You know, so that's the first thing, and just be ready to just kind of jump out and have some faith. Um, you know, the second part of that, I would probably say getting rid of all processed foods. Um, the vegetable seed oils are probably the most detrimental, in my opinion. They're in everything. The high fructose corn syrup, it's in everything. The chemicals, when you look at like an ingredient label, okay, if it's got more than 5 ingredients, which five is very liberal. I mean, me personally, if it's got more than two, it's like meat, salt. It's like if it's got more than two, I mean, I'm probably red flagging it, but I'll say five, whatever. People want to put, whatever. But if you got yellow 40, dye 7, Cardiff, whatever, it's garbage. It's not real food. Um, so getting that out of your diet, I think getting rid of alcohol, that's on a spiritual realm, as far as, figuring out kind of what's what when it comes to that. It's not for me to say. All I can tell you is as a testimony of me, I didn't drink alcohol during this process. The functionality of the liver is impaired via alcohol. The liver approaches alcohol like a toxin, and thusly you get intoxicated. Um, so I can only speak that from my experience. Um, but yeah, I would cut that, and literally for me, I would just start out just eating whatever your body feels like you need. I'll go ahead and tell you, during this process, when I first started out, I have never craved. Now it was probably like maybe 2.5 weeks in, where I'm just eating kind of like, homemade foods. I never craved Brussels sprouts more in my life. Like literally craved them. Okay. Um, Whatever the case. I can't speak to like, I don't eat them now. I mean, occasionally, whatever. I mean, if I'm at like a restaurant where maybe I have one, that kind of thing. I don't look at it as like evil, right? But in the same sense, I look at it and I say, that's food, but that's what my food eats. It's like it's kind of a different perspective on it. But all that being said, like, I mean, just listen to your body. I view it as kind of like a reverse like elimination diet. A lot of people do the elimination diet from eliminate everything and then adding back. The problem that I have with that is when you add it back, your body's not sitting there with a direct feedback loop to say, ooh, this was good. Instead, when you introduce something, it could be a week, it could be a week and a half before you start feeling the effects of what you added. So then all of a sudden, it's like it's a failing process. So for me, I look at it as, hey, eliminate everything that is overtly evil, gather a baseline, and then listen to your body. And in doing that, it's a reverse elimination so that, hey, more than likely, you could be like me as far as, anything was fair game. As long as it was made by God, naturally occurring in nature, it was fine. Okay. But in me listening to my body and how I felt and, my sleep, just the quality of my life, I felt better the more I kept going in the direction of a keto lifestyle where I wasn't spiking insulin at all. I was, my macros naturally were occurring. And there's a lot of validation of that. I would sit there and look at like, nutrition logs. And to me, it was so ironic. The the nutrition breakdown of electrolytes that are naturally occurring, when I look at the electrolytes of a steak, that exact proportion is what a steak is. And I'm sitting there going, this is so cool. Like this makes no sense. Like it's literally built in, So like the fat ratio, it's built in. The fat in a ribeye steak is proportionate to a ketogenic metabolic effect. So I think listening to your body, allowing everything to happen, but I also think that weighing yourself, you know you can see the dates right here. I mean, there's days in between. These are all the day counts right here. Okay. There's days in between. I went 9 days. I went 17 days. I wasn't sitting there. It's just like, hey, whenever I happen to think about it, I did it. But that gave me the feedback loop where it's like, hey, I'm losing weight and I'm enjoying my life. Before I was losing weight and I hated it, man. I was like, oh man, I can't wait till summer. I can't wait till this. But eventually that season passes and you just gain it all back and more. The sustainability of this is something I can do for the rest of my life.
So Andrew, is there a way people can reach out to you? Do you have any way to get in contact?
Yeah, I'm in the process of trying to. I'm so anti social media. I'm so anti like all that kind of stuff. I think Big Brother's always watching. I think Facebook was originally created as a CIA tool, like all this kind of stuff, right? That's the conspiratorial lane. Um, but I think what I realized, and I'm answering this kind of in the long way, which I've done, good in answering everything kind of in the long way so far. But um, I think, as far as kind of getting that point where it's like, where am I going? Going back to, how all this conversation started. Um, I think I realized for me that it was good that I was conspiratorial. It got me to where where I could actually acquire some truth. But in doing so, what I realized is as I actually found that truth, being conspiratorial was doing nothing but giving the glory to Satan. I'm just giving my energy in the sense that, like the Bible says, for the God of this earth, lowercase g. The reason bad things happen is because through God's sovereignty, he allows, like, if I'm a judge and I sentence somebody, to jail, do I care if they masturbate in their jail cell? No, of course not. Do whatever you want in your jail cell, you know? And the earth is Satan's jail cell. He can do whatever he wants. That's the reason bad things happen. So for me to sit here and talk about, like, oh, they're doing this, they're poisoning us, they're oh my gosh, you can only do it if you have grass-fed meat, blah blah blah. Like, I'm just giving the glory to Satan, you know. So for me, I'm trying to develop a voice. I'm contemplating, creating a YouTube channel, and kind of going down the avenue of a testimony directly to, what it means to be a Christian, which is ultimately what I've come to understand during this whole process. That's a whole nother story, and I'll keep it on topic as far as, we're here for Carnivore. But if people are interested, you can reach me by email. It's 3D3P3.nc@gmail.com. Definitely reach out to me via that. And I'm an open book, man. I want to help people. I think that's the process of life in itself. When you're a kid, it's all about what you can get. And as you grow older and mature, it's about what you can give. And you get a whole lot more from giving than you do getting.
Yeah, very nice. I'll include your email in the show notes. Thank you for coming on today and sharing your experience, Andrew. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, for sure.